Right now, behind your eyes, something is watching. Not in the sky, not in some other dimension. Closer than that. Inside the very act of listening to these words, there is a presence that has been quietly deciding what shows up in your life and what does not. It does not call attention to itself. It does not announce its decisions. Most days, it goes by the name of you. And here is what no one explains about it. It does not care what you want. It does not care what you announce. It does not care how many vision boards have hung above your desk, or how many affirmations have been spoken into the bathroom mirror at 6 in the morning. It cares about one thing only: what you actually believe, not what you say you believe, not the line in your bio, not the philosophy you would defend at dinner, the quiet assumption running underneath all of that, the background hum that has been there so long it feels like truth. If you are honest for a moment, you already know which assumption that is. You have felt the wall it makes, that invisible distance between what you keep trying to build and what keeps showing up instead. That wall is the subject of what follows, because it is not what most people think it is. There is an experiment that has unsettled physicists for almost 100 years. The double-slit experiment. A particle is fired through two narrow openings in a barrier. When no instrument is watching, the particle behaves like a wave. It spreads, it interferes with itself, it leaves a pattern of ripples on the screen behind. But the moment a measuring device is placed to record which slit it passed through, the wave collapses. The particle behaves like a single point. It chooses. Sit with that for a moment. The act of observation by itself changes the behavior of reality at its most fundamental level. Not the equipment, not the energy of the measurement, the simple presence of an observer. Physicists have debated what this means since the 1920s, and the debate is unfinished. But the implication is enormous, and a doctorate is not required to feel its weight. Reality, at its root, is not a fixed corridor you walk through. It is responsive, it is participatory, and the thing it appears to respond to is attention, conscious attention from the one who watches. Most people, when they first hear this, jump to the wrong conclusion. They think it means focus harder on what you want. Stare at the goal until the forehead aches. Visualize until the image is burned into the retina. The principle has nothing to do with the intensity of the gaze. It has to do with the quality of the one who is doing the watching. Two observers can stand in front of the same situation. One sees opportunity, one sees threat. The situation has not changed. The facts are identical, but two completely different lives unfold from that single moment forward, because the observer was different. You are not standing in a neutral world. You are standing in a world that is being shaped in real time by the lens you are looking through. And the lens is your belief, not the surface belief, the one written down, displayed, repeated, the deeper belief, the one installed in the nervous system before you had words to question it, the one that decides, without saying anything, what is possible for you and what is not. The world is yourself pushed out. Neville Goddard wrote that line a long time ago, and most who quote it miss what is sitting inside it. He was not describing wishful thinking. He was describing a mechanism, a law as indifferent to your opinion of it as gravity. You do not need to believe in gravity for it to hold you to the floor, and you do not need to consciously choose your deepest belief for it to shape every room you walk into, every conversation you enter, every silence you sit in alone at the end of the day. This is the place where the conversation becomes uncomfortable. Because if reality reflects the observer, then the life arranging itself around you right now is not a punishment. It is not bad luck. It is not a cosmic test set up by some intelligence keeping score. It is a mirror, and the mirror has been running its work in silence for as long as you have been alive. Most people will not stay in this room long enough to see that. They prefer the version of the story where something out there is doing this to them. The economy, the timing, the people, the past. The mirror is harder to live with. The mirror returns the gaze, and the gaze being returned was not chosen consciously. It was handed down by a parent who could not see clearly, by a teacher who saw 30 children and not one of them well, by a moment in the earliest years of life when something happened, and a young mind made a quick decision about the world it had landed in. That decision was never revisited. It became a filter. The filter became the room. The room became the life. Most of what governs the observer in you now was written before you turned 7. The operating system deciding what you notice, what you ignore, what you expect, what you fear. Most of it was authored by a child who did not yet have language, only emotion and repetition. A child who made survival decisions, not logical ones. If I stay quiet, I will not be hurt. If I need too much, I will be left. If I trust people, I will pay for it. These were not thoughts, they were blueprints, and the body learned them the way the body learns everything that matters, by storing them somewhere deeper than memory, in the muscles, in the breath, in the small reflex that flinches before the mind has time to interpret what just happened. The blueprints did not stay in childhood. They followed you into every relationship, into the way the body holds itself when someone gets close, into the small contraction in the chest the moment something good begins to arrive, and a quiet inner voice says, "This will not last," into the texture of an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, in the silence between 2 appointments, when the mind has nothing in particular to think about, and a familiar weight settles on the shoulders for no reason at all. That weight is not a mood. It is a posture the body has been holding so long it stopped registering as a posture. That voice, that weight, that posture, none of it is the enemy. All of it is the youngest part of the observer, still keeping a watch it began long ago. It did its work. The proof is that there is still someone here listening. But it never received word that the danger ended, so it keeps running the same scan, narrowing the same corridor of possibility it decided was safe 20, 30, 40 years ago. And the world, through it, keeps coming back the way the lens predicts. Notice how this works. Notice that the lens has never been described as something separate from you. The lens is the experience. Looking through it does not feel like looking through a lens. It feels like looking at the world, which is precisely the reason it has gone unexamined for so many years. A filter that knows itself as a filter has already lost half its grip. A filter that mistakes itself for the world keeps its grip indefinitely. And for most adults walking through their 40s and 50s, the filter has been worn for so long that taking it off feels like becoming someone else entirely. In a way, it is. There is a pattern in modern spiritual life that rarely gets named cleanly. A person reads everything, knows the vocabulary, can explain neuroplasticity over dinner, can quote Neville, can break down the subconscious mind better than most clinicians. The map has been studied in great detail, and yet the territory has not changed. The career still feels stuck. The relationships still repeat. The body still holds the same tension at the same hour of the same day. There is a private confusion in this, the confusion of knowing so much and remaining in the same spot. It is rarely admitted out loud. The reason is simple, and it is rarely said cleanly. Knowledge and belief are not the same thing. Something can be known in the mind and not believed in the body. A principle can be understood intellectually while the nervous system continues to broadcast its opposite. The phrase "I am worthy" can be repeated with full meaning, while the body beneath it is broadcasting "No, you are not on a frequency too quiet to hear consciously." And in any contest between the two, the body wins. Every time. Because the nervous system does not deal in words, it deals in patterns. In the silent electromagnetic field, the body has been generating for as long as it has been alive, calibrated to decades of stored experience. That field does not lie. The field cannot rehearse. The field is, at any given second, the most accurate reading of what the observer truly believes, far more accurate than anything that could be spoken or written. That field is the real signal, not what was written in the journal, what is carried in the bones. The field is what the world responds to. The field is belief made physical. Belief is not what you say. It is the signal your body is broadcasting in the silence between your sentences. This is why two people can sit through the same meditation, do the same practice, follow the same teacher, and arrive at completely different lives. One is present in the body, actually feeling what is there, allowing the discomfort to surface. The other is performing presence, going through the motions, doing it correctly instead of doing it truly. The posture is the same, the frequency is not, and reality answers the frequency, never the posture. There is a closed circuit most observers do not see they are inside. Yesterday's thoughts produce today's emotions. Today's emotions produce tomorrow's choices. Tomorrow's choices produce next week's experiences. Next week's experiences confirm the original belief. The loop closes. The world offers what it has always offered. The lens, however, has not learned to let any of it through. Consider what this looks like in a single ordinary life. A man learned, somewhere very early, that closeness ends in disappointment. Decades later, that man reads every book on attachment, takes every course on intimacy, can name every defense mechanism in operation in himself and in others. And still, when someone moves toward him with real warmth, something happens, a small withdrawal, a reason to stay busy, a perfectly reasonable doubt about the other person's motives. The relationship cools, the belief is confirmed. The book did not save him. The book never had the keys. The keys are stored in the body, and the body has been keeping a watch the mind never agreed to. Or consider the same mechanism in another corner. A man who grew up watching adults work hard and end the day exhausted, with little to show for it. Decades later, that man can analyze every business strategy, every marketing principle, every psychology of wealth. He can describe abundance with elegance. And still, every time something starts to actually work, an invisible ceiling appears. A self-sabotage so quiet it looks like prudence. A reason to delay. A moment of inexplicable hesitation right at the threshold. The opportunity dims. The income returns to the level the body remembers as safe. He blames the timing. The timing is innocent. That is the real meaning of "as you believe," so the world responds. The response is fidelity. Reality is being faithful to a frequency the observer stopped noticing it was emitting. Faithful in love and faithful in poverty, faithful in stagnation and faithful in repetition, faithful for as long as the signal stays the same. The strangest part of this work is what happens when a person finally turns and looks at the lens itself. Parts begin to surface that do not want to be seen. Parts ashamed, parts furious, parts that decided, a long time ago, that the only way to remain safe was to become invisible or perfect or indispensable. These parts do not release their grip easily, not because they are stubborn, because they are afraid. The belief running the life was not installed by an enemy. It was installed by you, by the most vulnerable, most resourceful version of you, the one who looked at an impossible situation and found a way through it. That version is not a flaw. That version is the reason there is anyone here at all. That version deserves respect, even as it is being outgrown. And outgrowing it is grief. Real grief. Not the grief of losing someone you once loved, but the grief of releasing an identity that kept you alive. This is the part rarely discussed in the brighter corners of manifestation, because grief does not move on a schedule and cannot be solved by a morning practice. It moves like water. It arrives when it arrives. It only asks not to be pushed away. There is also a stranger resistance underneath the grief, one that fewer people are willing to admit. The old observer is, in its own way, comfortable. Its predictions have been accurate for so long that being right has begun to feel like proof of its wisdom. Letting it go means accepting that decades of evidence were not evidence of how the world is. They were evidence of how this particular lens has been bending the world. That admission is harder than any practice. It is the reason most people stop short of the actual threshold. They would rather keep the explanation than lose the identity that the explanation was protecting. The practice that changes the observer is smaller than any technique. It is half a breath of awareness, caught in the middle of an old loop. The moment the chest tightens at incoming good news, and instead of carrying the tightening forward, something inside simply notices it, without explaining it, without fixing it, without arguing with it. That single noticing is the entire mechanism. In that breath, a neurological pathway that has fired 10,000 times receives no fuel. One time, one refusal to feed it. The pathway weakens by an amount too small to measure. But the next pass through the same loop is fractionally easier, and the one after that fractionally easier still. The lens, slowly, begins to thin in the place where it has been thickest. This is what the older traditions described in their own language, and what neuroscience eventually confirmed in its own. The observer is not fixed. The observer is plastic. The pathways the observer has been running on are physical, and they thin when they go unused. Nothing has to be added. Nothing has to be installed. Something only has to be allowed to weaken from disuse, the way a path through a forest disappears when no one walks it for a season. But the noticing must happen in the body, not in the mind. The mind cannot change the observer. The mind is the observer's most loyal employee, paid in agreement, kept on with the steady wages of being right. Only the present moment, lived through the body, has access to the lens itself. The past cannot reach it. That is called rumination. The future cannot reach it. That is called anxiety. Only this breath, here, in the place where the lens actually lives, which is why the work feels almost embarrassingly small from the outside. There are no rituals to perform. There are no incantations to memorize. There is only the willingness to remain in the body for half a second longer than the old loop wants you to. To feel the contraction without immediately reaching for the phone, the food, the argument, the next plan. To stay through the discomfort of the body without attaching a story to it. The story is the loop. The body, without the story, is silent. And in that silence, for the first time, the observer can be seen instead of only being looked through, which returns the question to the place it started. Behind your eyes, something is still watching. The same presence that has been there since long before this video began. It has been deciding, all the way through these minutes, what to take seriously and what to dismiss, what to let in and what to keep at arm's length. That decision-making has not paused while these words were being heard. It is doing its work in this very second. That presence is not a flaw to be removed. It is the variable. It has always been the variable, not the world, not the timing, not the people you happen to meet, not the family you happen to be born into, the one watching, the one interpreting, the one deciding 1,000 times a day what all of this is supposed to mean. Belief is not a declaration. It is a state. It is the way the body feels when no one else is looking. It is the thought that arrives in the half-second between waking and remembering who you are supposed to be in this life. That thought is the broadcast. That state is the signal the world is answering faithfully in every direction at once. Change the observer, and the observed must follow. It never had a choice. As you believe, so the world responds. Not as you wish, not as you announce, not as you train yourself to perform. As you believe, in the bones, in the breath, in the silence underneath everything else. As you believe in the second before you remember to believe anything in particular. That is the place the world is listening from. The watcher behind your eyes already knows this. It has known longer than the words for it have existed. The only thing remaining is to let it be seen. Not for a minute, for the rest of the week, for as long as it takes to settle past the level of memory and into the level of feeling. Nothing else needs to be done. The seeing is the work.